Active exploitation is up, patches are out, and two critical Cisco fixes need more than a routine update. Here's what Defender should move on now. This is your calm, fact-first cybersecurity briefing. Today's focus: active exploitation signals, urgent patching windows, identity risks you can actually close, and a crowded threat horizon that demands triage. First, Cisco says a critical Webex services flaw requires customer action. Cisco has released security updates for 4 critical vulnerabilities, including a fixed improper certificate validation issue in the cloud-based Webex services platform. This one is notable because remediation isn't just apply and done. It requires additional steps by customers. That means a patch without follow-through may leave exposure in place. It matters because improper certificate validation can undermine trust in authentication flows and integrations, a sensitive part of collaboration stacks. Defenders should apply the updates, then complete the specific post-update configuration steps Cisco outlines for Webex services. Validate single sign-on and certificate chains end-to-end, verify expected issuer and audience parameters, and monitor for authentication anomalies after the change. Next, Cisco patches 4 critical identity services and Webex flaws, enabling code execution. The update addresses critical issues across Cisco identity services and Webex services that could lead to arbitrary code execution and even allow an attacker to impersonate any user within the service. One of the flaws, CVE 2026-2184, is rated CVSS 9.8 and stems from improper certificate validation in single sign-on integration. This is the latest development in an ongoing issue we've been tracking. It matters because remote code execution and user impersonation directly translate to privilege escalation, lateral movement, and high-impact business risk. Defenders should prioritize these Cisco patches immediately, with emphasis on externally accessible or authentication-adjacent components. After patching, retest SSO flows and conditional access, review identity provider trust settings, and scrutinize recent administrative and authentication logs for anomalies that might indicate pre-patch abuse. If you operate both Webex and identity services, treat this as a coordinated change window to reduce drift between identity and collaboration systems. CISA adds 1 known exploited vulnerability to the catalog, CVE 2026-34197, an Apache ActiveMQ improper input validation vulnerability. The addition is based on evidence of active exploitation. This class of vulnerability is a frequent attack vector and poses significant risks to the federal enterprise. The catalog exists under a binding directive to reduce the risk of known exploited bugs. It matters because CEV entries represent exploitation happening now, not theoretical exposure. Even if you're not in the federal space, CEV listings consistently map to real-world attacker behavior. Defenders should inventory ActiveMQ instances, identify affected versions, and patch or apply vendor-recommended mitigations on an expedited timeline. Where patching requires downtime, narrow exposure by restricting network access to brokers, enforcing strong authentication, and monitoring for suspicious message patterns, unexpected management interface access, or anomalous broker restarts that can indicate attempted exploitation. On identity risk, a webinar spotlights orphan non-human identities and how to eliminate them. In 2024, compromised service accounts and forgotten API keys were implicated in 68% of cloud breaches. For every employee, organizations may have 40 to 50 automated credentials, service accounts, API tokens, AI agent connections, and OAuth grants, and many become unmanaged when projects end or staff changes occur. The headline context here is operational. Non-human identities are sprawling, and they're often invisible until they're abused. It matters because confirmed exposure of these credentials changes risk calculations across apps, cloud services, and downstream partners. Attackers repeatedly target tokens and service principals to bypass MFA and jump between environments. Defenders should run a structured discovery of all non-human identities, map ownership, and implement lifecycle controls, mandatory rotation, expiration, and revocation on project closeout, remove unused OAuth grants, enforce least privilege scopes, and add detection for anomalous token use, especially from new locations or services. Treat service accounts as high-value assets with dedicated monitoring and secrets management. Finally, a weekly threats bulletin flags a busy slate: a Defender 0-day, SonicWall brute force activity, a 17-year-old Excel RCE resurfacing, and 15 more stories. The key fact is volume and variety. Attackers mixing fresh exploits with very old vulnerabilities alongside supply chain complications. The context underscores that legacy bugs remain reliable entry points even as novel exploits emerge. It matters because operational tempo can overwhelm patch and detection cycles. Without prioritization, teams get stuck firefighting across unrelated incidents. Defenders should align intake to a risk-based plan, raise priority on actively exploited vulnerabilities and internet-facing services, harden authentication to blunt brute force attempts, including rate limiting, conditional access, and mandatory MFA, and set explicit service-level objectives for remediating high-severity issues in legacy components. Where immediate patching isn't possible, apply compensating controls and document interim risk acceptance with time-bound exceptions. Zooming out, today's themes are consistent. Active exploitation, urgent vendor patches, identity integrity, and disciplined prioritization. Move Cisco patches to the front of the queue. Close the loop on Webex customer-side actions. Remediate the ActiveMQ KEV quickly, and shrink your non-human identity footprint before it's abused. Subscribe for steady, actionable briefings. Share this with a teammate who owns identity or messaging infrastructure, and drop a comment on what you need prioritized in the next roundup.